This video is going to show you how to calculate the Pearson's correlation, Pearson Product Moment Correlation, and I'm going to make a copy of our data. So I'm going to click here on this sheet, and I'm going to say duplicate. And I'm going to do an analysis between GPA and work hours. So I'm going to put my title here. So I'm going to say GPA underscore work hours. And because I have formulas here, this is a query from a different sheet. I'm going to copy this and I'm going to do Command Shift Paste. So Command Shift V, and it pastes it just as the values. So that way, don't have to worry about we can sort the data. We don't have to worry about it coming from another sheet. So we are going to remove the variables except for what we're working with, just like I did in the independent samples example. I want to just leave work hours and GPA. So I'm going to delete these columns that are the variables that I'm not interested in for this analysis. And again, this is not the data that you're using for your project. This is a different data set so that I don't spoil the fun for you and answer our analyses. So here I have two different variables. So this person had a 4.0 GPA and works 16 hours per week. This one has a 3.8 and works 15 hours per week. What we want to do is we want to calculate our Pearson's R correlation. Now we're actually going to do regression, and I'll show you why that is. But first, I want you to do the equals correl that we did in the table 2. And you're going to highlight all of the GPA responses. Don't be impatient like me. I could just type in the bottom of it, but I was trying to show you different ways to do this. So I'm going to click here, and in this, instead of dragging it down, I'm just going to say through B104. And notice it automatically identifies what I'm trying to do, so I'm going to click that. And so the relationship between GPA and work hours was negative 0.08. So this is our Pearson's R. And this tells us our direction. It's negative, it's very small, right? But just so that you can see what I'm doing with this analysis. Now, again, you should have already installed in the extensions the XLMiner analysis tool pack, and you'll go to start. And you can see that you can do correlation right here. So if you go to correlation, the problem is that it's not actually going to give you all the information you need. And so if I were to, for this input range, if I were to just go ahead and highlight all of this, both of these columns with all the data that I'm using, and I click here, so you need to highlight first, and then you click where you want it to go. It is grouped by columns, so we have 2 columns that we're comparing. And I'm not going to click labels in the first row because I didn't highlight the labels. I could edit this. I could change it to A1, and then I could say labels in the first row. I need to choose an output range, so I'm going to click here, and that's going to be my output range. And I'm going to say, oops, see how it changed it without my permission? It went to A2. So I'll just unclick labels rather than try and make it. I'm going to say OK. So it gives us the same Pearson's correlation. And this column 1, that's a GPA, right? So column 1 is GPA, column 2 is work hours, and it gives us that. But it doesn't give us any other information. So that's why we're not going to use that. You are going to use linear regression. So right here, when you go to linear regression, our Y range is the one that we think is most likely to change because of our X range. So this is our dependent variable. For a Pearson's correlation, we don't have a true independent and dependent, so you're just going to choose whatever you think feels most appropriate. I'm going to say that it's more likely that work hours affect GPA. So I'm going to make GPA my dependent variable. And I'm going to highlight this column. So all of the responses in this column. And then I'll click there because that's going to be my dependent variable. Then I'm going to highlight work hours. Shoot, too impatient. Don't be like me. Don't be impatient. There we go. And then I'm going to click that in my X range. So you should, when you're done, make sure that you have two different columns that are listed here, and you do need to highlight them and then click. I'm not going to select labels. I'm going to leave the confidence level at 95. I do need to pick an output range. So I'm going to go ahead and click right here and do an output range. And so this is where it's going to go. I'm going to say okay. Now you get a lot of information here. This is your R² value, which is an effect size, and you can report that. It is very small. And then you can use your adjusted R². We'll talk about that in class. It tells you how many observations that we have. So that's our N, our sample size. So that's important to know as well. And then over here, you can see that we've got a lot of information, and you actually don't need a lot of it. What you are going to use is the significance F. This is our p-value. So this significance F, you can just write p-value, just write over it. And I would highlight it. I find that helpful. So you can ignore, this is if we were doing a regression. This information is something that you would report, which we're just gonna treat it as a Pearson's R. This is just a workaround to give us the p-value without having to do a lot of extra steps. Believe it or not, this is less steps than the other way. The other thing you can see here is that this is repeated. So I'm gonna use my little paint format right here, but that's the p-value. So you can see it's already labeled as p-value, but you wanna use the row that has the X variable 1. So here we can see that our p-value is greater than 0.05. So this is not statistically significant. We would not reject the null hypothesis. The way you decide if it matches your hypothesis is if it's the direction you expected, and that's what's up here. So this, this direction up here is negative, and so that's telling us that that would match if our hypothesis was that we thought that people with higher GPA would work less hours. And that is the end of this video.